Tyler? He's planning to join us at Isabella's graduation. My name is Scott, and I'm currently 51 years old. I've spent around 27 years as a wealth management consultant right here in Raleigh, building a reputable business that helps families solidify their financial stability for generations to come. I never anticipated needing to safeguard myself from my wife's duplicity. Diane mentioned it as casually as announcing dinner arrangements, standing in our sun-drenched breakfast nook, a steaming cup of joe in her hand, without even looking directly at me. She just casually mentioned it, as if it was the most unremarkable thing in the world. "Mark," I repeated, "your fitness coach?" "He's become like a family member to all of us." Our family. That term sounded hollow, almost sinister. I had noticed subtle shifts over the preceding weeks, minor alterations that collectively pointed towards something substantial. Diane had begun exercising 6 times a week instead of the usual 4. Fresh attire mysteriously appeared in her wardrobe, high-end items that I didn't recall her buying. She would disappear for hours on weekends, citing errands that previously took only about 45 minutes. Isabella's graduation is a family affair, I emphasized. Mark is practically family now. She finally made eye contact when uttering those words, revealing a coldness I had never perceived before, as if daring me to create a disturbance. I refrained from taking the bait, merely nodding and proceeding to my car. Settling into the driver's seat, I retrieved my smartphone and meticulously reviewed our bank statements. There was nothing outwardly unusual there. Credit card records also appeared normal, but that meant very little. Diane was clever. If she intended something, she would undoubtedly handle it with utmost caution. The graduation was about 4 weeks out. Isabella had worked tirelessly to secure her degree in finance. A full 4 years at Duke University, maintaining a 3.9 grade point average while working part-time to supplement her income. She deserved better than the impending conflict brewing between her parents. I started the engine and drove to my office where I was scheduled to meet with the Johnson family to discuss their estate planning. It was routine work, but while sitting opposite them, observing the depth of affection in their eyes after 40 years of marriage, a painful ache struck my gut. They trusted each other completely, often completing each other's sentences and making mutual decisions. When had Diane and I stopped functioning as a cohesive unit? Returning home that evening, I found her engrossed in a phone conversation in our master suite. The door was firmly closed. I could hear her laughing at something, her voice softer than it had been with me in ages. When she eventually descended the stairs an hour later, I was absorbed in a book on the living room couch. "Who were you speaking with?" I asked. "Oh, just Isabella, finalizing graduation plans."
Isabella was at her workplace. I had personally dropped off her lunch at the cafe that afternoon. We had been married for 26 years. We first met when I was 29, a fresh graduate working at a small private equity firm. Diane was 27, teaching primary education, vibrant, filled with aspirations. We had built our entire life together, diligently saving for the down payment on our home by economizing on meals and foregoing vacations. When Isabella was born, Diane took 5 years off work to be a stay-at-home mom. I took on additional clients, worked weekends, and did everything possible to guarantee our financial stability. Those were fulfilling years, though challenging. We were a strong partnership. The subtle cracks first began to appear approximately 7 years ago. Diane returned to part-time work when Isabella entered high school. She seemed restless, expressing a need for personal fulfillment. I supported that decision, encouraging her pursuits. She enrolled at the fitness center where Mark was employed, attending religiously and returning home energized, discussing her workout sessions and her new acquaintances. Initially, I was pleased that she had discovered an enjoyable activity, but the dynamics of our dinner conversations began to shift. They used to revolve around our daily activities, Isabella's academic engagements, and our weekend plans. Gradually, the conversations shifted to Diane sharing anecdotes about gym gossip, Mark's nutritional insights, and Mark's viewpoints on diverse subjects. Mark suggested this. Mark thinks that. Mark recommended a new dining establishment. I should have paid closer attention much earlier. The phone calls commenced around the same period, lengthy conversations that she would conduct in a separate room. When I inquired, she would say it was her sister or her friend Patty from work. But I was familiar with how Diane communicated with her sister. This was noticeably different. No significant funds were disappearing, but new acquisitions continued to surface. A designer handbag she claimed was a bargain, expensive activewear, and a spa voucher she attributed to Patty. Isabella had also taken note, asking me one evening if everything was all right between her mother and me. She expressed that things seemed different. I reassured her that parents go through phases, that people evolve, and that it was a normal aspect of life. But while sitting in my home office that night, scrutinizing 26 years of financial records, I acknowledged how vulnerable we were. Everything was jointly held: our house, vehicles, investment portfolios, and business holdings. We had constructed our life assuming we would always remain united. The marital agreement we had executed 10 years ago was hidden in my filing cabinet. It was actually Diane's idea. I had been concerned about potential liabilities associated with my business and wished to protect our family assets in case of unforeseen circumstances. The document was thorough, incorporating a clause pertaining to infidelity. I retrieved it and reread every single word. Subsequently, I made several phone calls. The confirmation arrived early Tuesday. I was analyzing client portfolios when my phone vibrated. It was a text message from an unknown number, with an image attached. Diane and Mark at a local hotel restaurant, not seated distantly as friends. Instead, they were sitting adjacent to each other, his hand resting on her thigh and her head resting on his shoulder. The message read, "Thought you should be aware. Hotel security possesses additional details if you need them." I stared blankly at the photograph for about 15 minutes before dialing the number. "This is Peter Harrison. I work in security at the Radisson downtown. Your wife has been a frequent guest here for approximately 5 months, always in the same suite, always with the same man. Why are you disclosing this to me? My own brother experienced something similar. I wish someone had alerted him sooner." I expressed my gratitude and ended the call. The peculiar thing was that I wasn't furious, at least not yet. I primarily felt something akin to relief, as if I had been holding my breath for weeks and could finally release it. At least I now had certainty. I returned home earlier than usual and parked my car in the driveway. Our house looked as ordinary as always, a 2-story colonial with navy blue shutters and the rose garden Diane had cultivated when Isabella was a child. From the outside, we appeared to be a typical, affluent, middle-class family. But everything had irreversibly changed. Isabella's car wasn't there. She was working part-time at the library. Diane's car was also gone, likely at the fitness center or the hotel. I entered the house and prepared a sandwich for myself. I sat at the kitchen table where we had shared countless meals together, made numerous decisions, and planned our daughter's future. The graduation invitation was attached to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a graduation cap. Isabella was incredibly proud when she presented it to us, the first person in either of our families to graduate from university. "I want both of my parents there, front row. This is our moment." I finished my sandwich and proceeded to my home office. I retrieved the marital agreement once again and reread it in its entirety. Afterward, I opened my laptop and began creating lists: asset protection strategies, trust formations, and documentary evidence requirements.
I had spent 2 decades assisting families in planning their financial security. It was now time to apply that expertise to safeguard my own interests. My phone rang around 7 p.m. It was Diane. "I'm going to be late tonight. Mark and I are having dinner." "Sounds good," I responded. "Take your time." After ending the call, I contacted my attorney, my accountant, and a private investigator whose business card had been stored in my desk drawer for approximately 4 years. Graduation was now only 19 days away, and I had considerable work to complete. I decided to test the waters 2 weeks before Isabella's graduation with a casual conversation over morning coffee. I was just pondering the seating arrangements for the graduation. I began, "Perhaps Mark should sit with his own relatives instead of with our family. Let's keep things simple." Diane's coffee cup paused midway to her mouth. "What do you mean by that?" "Simply that it's a family-oriented day. Parents, grandparents, close kin. Mark doesn't quite fit into that category." Her demeanor abruptly shifted. An instant defense mechanism was activated. "Mark has offered incredible support to our family. He deserves to be there." "Supportive in what way?" That question was ill-advised. I was aware of it the instant I voiced it, but I wanted to observe her reaction. She placed her cup down and looked at me as if I was being unreasonable. "He's been a devoted friend during a complex period." "What complex period?" "This." She gestured between us, "our situation, the way things have been recently." So now I was at fault. The estrangement, the secrets, the late nights, those were the issues. "I haven't noticed any specific complexities." "That's precisely the problem, Scott. You never perceive anything anymore." She got up and started cleaning the table with brisk, almost violent actions. "You're constantly working, always focused on your clients and their concerns. When was the last time you actually inquired about my well-being? Truly inquired?" I was tempted to point out that I had indeed asked her just last week when she returned from one of her extended errands, appearing agitated. She had dismissed me, saying that it was nothing. But I remained silent, allowing her to continue. "Mark listens. He values what I'm enduring. He makes me feel as if I matter." There it was, the justification, the method by which she was rewriting our history to present herself as the victim and him as the savior. "So, he is attending the graduation?" "Yes. And if that bothers you, perhaps you should consider why." She grabbed her purse and headed toward the door. "I'm going to the fitness center. Don't wait up tonight. Mark and I are going for dinner after my session." The door closed forcefully behind her. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour, drinking coffee and reflecting. Then I called Peter Harrison at the hotel. "I need copies of everything you have," I asserted. "Hotel documents, security footage, credit card receipts, everything." "That is a substantial amount of documentation. It might require several days to gather." "Money is not a problem. I need it to be thorough, and I need it to be legal, admissible in court if necessary." "Understood. Give me a week." That afternoon, I met with my attorney, Ryan Thompson. We had known each other for around 17 years. He had managed the incorporation of my business, our wills, and the marital agreement. "This is a strong agreement," he affirmed, reviewing the document. "If you can substantiate infidelity, she forfeits any claim to business assets, investment accounts, and even spousal support."
What about the house? Joint property acquired before the agreement? She would be entitled to half, but you could compel a sale. And if I were to move assets prior to filing? He looked at me attentively. That depends on how and when you move them. Concealing assets is illegal, but asset protection isn't. Explain the distinction. Asset protection entails legal structures implemented for legitimate purposes, such as trusts, business entities, and retirement accounts. As long as they are established and funded for legitimate purposes, they are secure. I acknowledged his point. What qualifies as a legitimate purpose? Estate planning,
tax efficiency, creditor protection, and provisions for your daughter's future. We spoke for 2 hours. As I left his office, I had a clear understanding of what I could and couldn't do. More crucially, I established a timeline. Everything needed to be in place before I confronted Diane. Once she realized that I was aware, she would retain legal counsel and fight for everything she could possibly obtain. But if the assets were already secure and legally transferred into legitimate structures, there would be nothing left to contest. That evening, I called Isabella. "How are your studies progressing? Is everything ready for graduation?" "I'm nearly done with my finals. I'm so thrilled, Dad. This feels like the beginning of everything." "I'm proud of you, sweetheart, truly proud. Will you and Mom be all right at the graduation? Things have seemed tense recently." I closed my eyes. A perceptive child, too perceptive. "Everything will be fine," I assured her. "This is your day, and nothing will ruin that." Peter Harrison delivered the documentation on a Thursday. Hotel documents dating back 7 months, security footage from the lobby cameras, and credit card receipts from the restaurant and room service. It was worse than I had imagined. They had been meeting twice a week, sometimes 3 times, always in the same suite and always charged to a credit card that I did not recognize. When I called the number on the card, it directed me to Mark's voicemail. He was financing their affair, a realization that stung more than it should have. The footage showed them arriving and leaving separately, a carefully rehearsed procedure. This was not a recent occurrence that had spiraled out of control. It was a premeditated, ongoing deception. But the real shock came when I found the paperwork. Hidden in Diane's jewelry box, concealed beneath the earring she never wore, was a folder. Inside were printouts from real estate websites advertising condominiums in Savannah and apartments in Wilmington, all of them circled in red ink. There was also a handwritten note in Diane's writing: "Must establish residency by July. Divorce filing in August." July was only 4 weeks away, and August was immediately following graduation. She wasn't merely having an affair, she was planning her exit strategy. The confrontation at graduation was intended not to be spontaneous, it was intended to be calculated. I sat on the edge of our bed, clutching the documents, and understood for the first time how thoroughly I had been manipulated. The fitness center membership, the new attire, the personality transformation. Mark was not simply her lover, he was her transition plan. And I was expected to be the unsuspecting victim when she revealed her intention to leave. My phone rang. It was Diane. "I'm going to be late again tonight. Mark is helping me plan something special for Isabella's graduation." "What kind of special?" "A surprise. You'll see." I had no doubt that I would. After she ended the call, I contacted my accountant. "Michael, I need to establish a trust, an educational trust for Isabella, and transfer some assets for tax purposes." "What kind of assets?" "Investment portfolio, some business interests, possibly a property transfer." "That is a significant move, Scott. Is there a specific reason for the timing?" "Estate planning. I want to get things in order while Isabella is starting her adult life." It wasn't exactly a lie. We met the following morning. Michael had prepared the paperwork overnight, creating an irrevocable educational trust with Isabella as the sole beneficiary. I would serve as trustee until she turned 30, but the assets would belong to her. "This protects the funds from creditors, divorces, and lawsuits," Michael explained. "Once you transfer assets into the trust, they are no longer part of your personal estate." "What about the house?" "You could transfer your half to the trust, leaving your wife with her 50%, but she couldn't force a sale without your daughter's consent as the trust beneficiary." I signed the papers that afternoon, transferring 70% of our investment portfolio into the trust, my half of the house, and 2 rental properties we owned. On paper, I had just given my daughter $4.1 million. In reality, I had ensured that Diane would receive nothing. That evening, she returned home elated. "The graduation surprise is progressing perfectly," she exclaimed. "Mark has been exceptionally helpful with the planning." "I'm certain he has." She looked at me quizzically. "You seem different lately, more relaxed." "I'm simply looking forward to Isabella's big day. It's going to be perfect, a fresh start for everyone." She had no idea how accurate she was. During the final week before graduation, I implemented the last components of my plan. Early Monday, I called Peter Harrison one last time. I need a witness statement, someone who can testify to what they witnessed if this goes to court. He already prepared a witness statement with dates, times, and room numbers. I've worked in security for 14 years. I know what lawyers need. On Tuesday, I met with the private investigator, Olivia Reed. She was professional, detailed, and costly. I need documentation of their public appearances together. Restaurants, events, anywhere they might have been seen as a couple. How far back should I go? 7 months. Everything you can find. Photographs, witness statements, credit card records, everything. She gave me a preliminary report that afternoon. It documented 28 occasions where Diane and Mark had been observed together outside the fitness center, including dinners, coffee shops, and a weekend getaway to the mountains that I had believed she had taken with her sister. Her sister resided in Arizona. On Wednesday, I had lunch with Isabella at the library where she worked. "Are you nervous about graduation?" I inquired. "Excited, but also a little sad. This chapter of my life is coming to an end, you know." I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you and Mom going to be okay after graduation, when I'm not around as much?" A perceptive child. Too perceptive. Sometimes people grow in different directions. That doesn't mean anyone is at fault, it just means things evolve. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Will you be all right if things change?" "If things change, I'll be fine, sweetheart. You don't need to worry about me. Mom has seemed different recently. Happier, but in a way that excludes you." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens between your mother and I, it won't alter how much we both love you. That's the one thing you never have to worry about." On Thursday, I received the final documentation from Olivia Reed, a comprehensive file that was organized and indexed. It contained hotel records, security footage, witness statements, and financial records. I placed it all in a manila envelope and sealed it. On Friday morning, Diane was practically radiating. "Tomorrow is the big day," she declared. "I can't wait for you to see the surprise. Should I be concerned?"
She laughed, actually laughed. "You might be surprised, but ultimately I think you'll be relieved. We've both been pretending for a while now, Scott. Tomorrow we end the charade." She kissed my cheek, the first time she had done that in months. "Mark is picking me up in an hour. We're going to finalize the surprise." After she departed, I walked through our house one last time. 24 years of memories in every room. Isabella's baby photos on the mantel, family vacations captured in frames along the hallway, Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, and ordinary Sundays that had felt perfect at the time. It had been a good life, but it was ending tomorrow. I called my attorney one final time. "Everything is in place," Ryan confirmed. "The trust is funded and recorded, and the documentation is comprehensive. If she files for divorce, she'll find that most of the assets are no longer marital property. And if she contests it, the trust was established for legitimate estate planning purposes. The marital agreement is ironclad. She signed it willingly with her own legal representation." I ended the call and sat in my home office, gazing at the envelope containing all the evidence of Diane's affair. Tomorrow, at Isabella's graduation, Everything would change. I was ready. The graduation ceremony was flawless. Isabella walked across the stage with incredible poise. For that instant, she was the center of attention. Diane and I sat together in the front row, pretending to be proud parents one last time. Mark was sitting 4 seats down, close enough to be part of our group, but distant enough to maintain the illusion of propriety. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos on the campus lawn, with extended family, grandparents, and cousins. Everyone wanted pictures with Isabella. That's when Diane acted. "Before we go to dinner," she announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "I have something to say." The family group fell silent. Isabella was still in her cap and gown, holding her diploma and smiling, expecting another congratulatory speech. "Scott," Diane began, looking directly at me, "I'm done living with you. I've finally found someone who makes me happy." She gestured toward Mark, who stood up and moved closer to her. Isabella's face turned pale. "Mom, what are you doing?" Diane disregarded her. "I know this is difficult, but I can't pretend any longer. Mark and I are now together, starting a new life." My mother began to speak, but I raised my hand to silence her. The entire family was staring, anticipating that I would explode, scream, or create a spectacle. Instead, I smiled. "Thanks for being honest," I said. I reached into my jacket and retrieved the manila envelope. "Since we're no longer pretending, I have something for you as well." I handed her the envelope. "Open it." She looked confused, but took it, likely expecting divorce papers or some angry letter. She opened the envelope and removed the contents. First were the hotel receipts, followed by the security photos and the marital agreement with the infidelity clause highlighted in yellow. Her expression changed as she read, with confusion turning to comprehension and then to panic. "What is this?" "Documentation," I replied calmly. "Hotel records, witness statements, financial transfers, everything you've been doing for the past 7 months.
She frantically flipped through the papers, her hands trembling. "The final page is particularly interesting," I added. "Asset transfer documents. As it turns out, while you were planning your surprise, I was planning mine." She discovered the trust documentation and read it twice. "You can't do this." "I already did. Everything is now in Isabella's name. The investments, the rental properties, and my half of the house. It's all protected." Mark stepped forward. "What does this mean?" I looked at him for the first time that day. "It means that the woman you're beginning a new life with just lost access to $4.1 million. Diane consulted 4 different attorneys over the subsequent 3 weeks. They all reached the same conclusion. The marital agreement was valid, the asset transfers were legal, and she had no grounds to contest either. She retained the house, her car, and her teacher's pension. Mark disappeared the day after her first attorney meeting. Isabella and I had dinner the following month at her favorite restaurant. "Are you angry at Mom?" she asked. "No," I replied, and I meant it. Disappointed, but not angry. "Are you angry at yourself?" That was a more difficult question. Perhaps, for not realizing it sooner and for allowing it to continue for as long as it did. "Do you think you'll date again?" "Someday, when I'm ready." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Dad, for how you handled everything. You could have made it ugly. Your graduation day was yours, not our problems. You maintained your dignity, and that matters." 7 months later, I relocated to a smaller house across town. I maintained my business, my clients, and my routines. Diane moved to Savannah with another personal trainer she encountered at a yoga studio. Isabella started her graduate studies in the fall, and the trust fund I had established covered all her expenses and continued to provide for her long after I was gone. Occasionally, I drive past our old house. The new owners have painted it lavender and added a gazebo. It looks serene. I don't miss the deceit or the careful pretense. I don't miss walking on eggshells or wondering what Diane was actually doing when she said she was running errands. I miss the family we once were before the lies took over. But that family had vanished long before graduation day. Some endings are not tragedies. Sometimes they are simply the truth finally catching up.